Dear Diary, this video or vlog, I guess you would call it, is for brand new beginners. It's what I wish I knew 20 years ago when I first started gardening. I've heard a lot of people say, I'm not on Facebook or Instagram anymore, but I've heard a lot of people say on there that their goal is to replace a grocery store. Well, if we live the way that the pioneers did, or people that grew their own food, then I guess that's possible. It's not probable, but it is possible. At least you have something growing if there is nothing at the grocery stores, and it looks like, that happens more often than we ever thought it could in this world. But the way that we eat things out of season. And there's things that grow in season, and there's things that do not grow in season. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that. But I know with the asparagus, for example, that it comes in the spring, or I can harvest the asparagus spears in the spring and in the fall. And the rest of the time, it's just pretty in my edible landscape. It's just a beautiful fern. Note to self, I need to buy some more blueberry plants because I lost mine in this last drought, terrible heat we had. So I need to get some more blueberry plants. Potatoes. Okay, so here, what I like to do is weigh how many pounds, or in some cases ounces, of the things that I've grown, so that I can put it in my harvest tracker in my garden journal. I write it down by what it was, the date that it was harvested, and how many pounds. And at the end of the year, then I can put down how many pounds of food I grew and when things were harvested. So here I'm seeing purple potatoes, red potatoes, white potatoes, new potatoes, and all different kinds of potatoes. And then I see the garlic. Okay, so potatoes and garlic is something that will store for a very long time, unlike lettuce or spinach. You can freeze spinach. I don't know a good way to preserve lettuce, but yeah, I was really, really excited and proud and thrilled to learn that garlic is the easiest thing in the world to grow. Like, easy. Now, one of the other things that I do for my harvest journal or my harvest tracker is I can go to the grocery store or online, and I can see, like this, in this case, 3 bulbs of garlic was $2.48. Okay, so I can look at how much I grew, and I can translate that into dollars, and I can put a dollar value on what I grew. And I like to take the organic price because I don't use any pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides, none of the cides, and I know exactly how my food was treated, and it's better than organic. So I can actually translate it into dollars. I can see what the dollar value is of what I grew. Now that picture was from several years ago. It was just a picture that I took years ago. I do that with the spices. I do that with everything. And it adds up. Now, here's some onions. That's something else that stores really well for a pretty long period of time. Now, if you buy it at the grocery store, it probably doesn't last as long because there's no telling how long it's been in distribution from the farm, how long it's been sitting in the back room before it gets put out on the shelf. But here's some more purple potatoes. Now, this next picture, I really like how I can see everything that came in at the same time. So there's some onions, there's some potatoes, there's some plums in this picture. I know that this picture was probably taken sometime around June because that's when I will harvest the potatoes, onions, and the plums. But that's something I wouldn't have known if I hadn't taken a picture and been gardening for a little while and tracking this for a little while. Now, these are some snow peas, and I have found that I like to pick these young. The one on the top there is too big for me. They get a little bit stringy. I know they have different varieties where they're not stringy or whatever, but if you eat them young, then that just solves the problem. Broccoli, I'm so proud of my broccoli. You know, the big thing that I have figured out about broccoli, someone called it the new it veggie, the leaves taste just like broccoli. And that's something I never see in the store. I have never seen broccoli leaves in the store, but I can saute them, I can eat them fresh, and they have that nutty flavor of the broccoli, and you just can't find that in the store. But that is something that I have found with a lot of the plants that I grow, that a lot of the leaves are edible. You have to check and see which ones are or are not, but in this case, the leaves are great. Love them. And it's a way to extend the season on a broccoli plant and the nutrient content. Like if we need to keep eating on that for whatever reason, then we can just keep eating the leaves. So yeah. Now, I love this multicolored lettuce mix that I got from, I don't know which store, which seed pack it was. Romaine is my favorite, but this is so pretty in the edible landscape, and it's so good. It tastes great. Tomatoes. Now, one of the things that I wish I would have known in the beginning when I first started gardening is that, okay, so everybody loves a good slicing tomato. Everybody loves the look of the big heirloom tomatoes. But one of the things that I have found, and I will always grow a big slicing tomato, but I don't grow a whole lot of those plants. I have found that the cherry tomatoes, the plum tomatoes, they're so prolific that I can get a lot more of them than probably by weight than I can on a slicing tomato. A slicing tomato, you're waiting. And with these, you can see I'm picking on them almost every day. And now this Brad's Atomic Grape Tomato, I bought it because it was pretty. I think they call it Gem or something like that. It's multicolored and everything. I found that I didn't really prefer the taste. They just don't taste as good. But the other thing about it is that I have found that I really, really like the paste tomatoes, because the paste tomatoes, like a Roma tomato or an Amish tomato or a San Marzano tomato, they have more meat in them. And so that's a winner in the garden for me, because I like to make salsa and make tomato sauce that I can keep in my pantry throughout the winter months and the non-growing season. Now, these pictures right here, I like it because I can see what I'm picking all at the same time. There was a little bit of okra, some poblano peppers, some jalapeno peppers, tomatoes, and the small little yellow pear of tomatoes. And then this one, there was some more okra, there was some tomatoes, and then some herbs. Now with the green beans, one of the things that I have found is that if I pick them, I don't have rows and rows and rows. I have everything all mixed up, right? And that's how I do my pest management. That's how I do everything that I do, edible landscaping wise. But I do have a lot of green beans, but I find that I'm picking handfuls at a time. So if I'm canning, I have to kind of keep them aside, like in the refrigerator, until I get enough to can with. So, and I have found that the deer really love to eat the bean leaves. Okay, strawberries. What can I say about strawberries? Love strawberries. I always want more strawberries. Although we throw away a lot of strawberries, or actually the chickens get a lot of strawberries because they just don't last as long. Now, one of the things that I found about strawberries is my biggest pest are birds. They'll come take one peck out of it and then they move on to the next one. So this is something, I'm usually not a fussy gardener, but I do need to make some kind of a cloche to go over the strawberries, you know, like a chicken wire cloche that the birds won't eat them. Okay, so beans. I have found that I do not really care for black beans, but I haven't really given them that much of a chance. I felt the same way about pinto beans before, and now I have a couple of ways that I really do like them, and they're really good. It's a good calorie. Some people might disagree with me. Well, let's just talk about this for a second. In the garden and in today's world, I believe that we need to be looking at calories as a good thing, that calories can be a good thing, and good calories can be a good thing. So I am going to try something 10 different ways before I decide, you know what, I really just don't like that. It's not worth the space in my garden. And I cannot say that about beans at this point as far as hard beans. I love green beans, the snap beans. And did you know, I did not know this as a gardener when I first started out, that basically beans are beans. And if you go to look for a pinto bean in a seed catalog, or when I went and looked for a pinto bean in a seed catalog, I couldn't find it. It was either this kind of bean or that kind of bean, but they hardly ever called it a pinto bean. Okay, so okra, that's another thing that I do not really care for the taste, but I haven't really given it much of a chance. So everybody says fried okra, fried okra. But when I was on Facebook, which I'm not anymore, I asked some of my Facebook friends, how do you eat okra? Besides in gumbo. I do like it in gumbo. But you know, it's that diversity. It's growing a lot of different things that gives you a lot of different vitamins and nutrients for your body. And eating seasonally, there is something to that. But that's another thing that I need to try 10 different ways before I decide, you know, it doesn't deserve space. And it's a very pretty plant in the garden. Okay, watermelons. One year, we had so many watermelons that we did the watermelon challenge. I told all my friends, look, however many you can come carry, you can have. And this is a picture of the foreman, Jesse, and he was probably making some kind of a crude joke, but I had lots of friends and family come and just get watermelons. But yeah. Let's talk diversity. So peaches, cucamelons, more peaches, squash. We have, if you grow squash or zucchini, you know that, or you'll find out, you're going to have a ton. Now we're going to talk about preparations here in a little bit. Corn, and everything is just all mixed up. We have peppers, and a lot of times I go out there without my basket and I'll just grab one or two things because I see them and I see that they're ready. But then sometimes I have to go out with a bucket. And I have gotten to where I leave my little baskets and my buckets next to the front door, so I'll grab them on my way out because a lot of times I use my t-shirt to gather everything. So here's cucamelons. We have some goji berries. Let's talk about the goji berries for a second. So they're supposed to be really, really good for you, right? I have found I do not like the way they taste, but they're so good for you. I kind of look at it as a little red pill. And I have a chef friend who'll say, man, you've got a fortune in goji berries there. And I said, well, you know, you're welcome to come pick as many as you want, but this is something that was so much easier to grow than I thought. And they just started spreading and growing everywhere. They're almost a little bit invasive. So I think I may be growing those in a different part of my property, not even in the gardens, kind of in the back in the woods. Okay, let's talk peppers. These are called pretty and sweet. We have some jalapeno peppers.
I may need another basket.
Yeah, the jalapeno peppers are so prolific. I think I grow in general maybe 2 plants a year. And they're just so prolific. I'm making jelly, I'm preserving the peppers. Actually, funny story, there's one brand of pickled peppers that we really like, you know, for nachos and things like that. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but I was nervous to get into the pickled peppers that I had made because I just didn't think they were going to be as good. These other ones are really, really good. And then we got into ours and I was like, you know, mine are just as good as theirs the very first time that I made them. And so, yeah, we just eat the ones that we make now. So less from the grocery store, right? And what you're seeing here is poblano, Anaheim, jalapeno, pretty and sweet peppers. And I think we have a little cherry pepper. Now, this is some orach, I believe. So I've heard people talk about Malabar spinach and orach and how it's very similar to spinach, and it just doesn't have the same taste to me. It's a pretty plant. It has a lot of color and interest in the garden, but I just don't think I'm going to dedicate any space to those anymore. They just don't have the flavor that I'm looking for or what I'm used to. Maybe I should follow my rule and try it 10 different ways, but I've got other things that I would rather do. Like cucumbers. So one of the things that I have figured out about cucumbers is I like the taste of them when they're young. I don't like them to get too big, and sometimes I can't see them, and that's why I don't pick them sooner. But the one in the top there, that's more like a ballpark pickle. But they just get a little tougher. I like them when they're the baby dill size. I like dill pickles. But now I would dedicate more space to cucumbers in my gardens. Only a few cucumber plants are pretty prolific in my experience. So I am not going to dedicate as much space this year because we always get plenty of cucumbers. But again, you'll have good years on some crops and bad years on some crops, or I do. So, but we do like to we like pickles. Now, on the subject of pickles, these are cucamelons. They taste a lot like a cucumber, but I found they did not pickle well. That was my experience. But in the next picture, you're going to see what looks like cucamelons in pickling juice in a mason jar. But I just keep them in the refrigerator in water, and I find they stay nice and crisp that way for quite a while. And so, yeah, the biggest time that I like to eat a cucamelon is when I'm actually out in the garden. I'll just walk by and I'll pick some and I'll eat them right then and there. Now, this next picture, talking about diversity, is kohlrabi. I got some free seeds in an order that I placed with Baker Creek Seeds, and I thought, well, this is unusual looking. And I didn't really know what to do with it. So I harvested a bunch of them. This is one of those things where I need to try it 10 different ways before I decide I don't want to grow it anymore, because it's really cool looking in the gardens. But honestly, I'm not an expert on preparing stuff with kohlrabi or preparing kohlrabi. But that leads me to the next section of this video. I'm going to talk a lot about creative ways to use it, or how I use it, a lot of the harvest in the garden, along with some other crops we haven't even talked about yet. And I think that this is the most important thing to say about this video is you wouldn't believe how much food and how much diversity of food that you can grow in an edible landscape. It's beautiful, but it's also very, very, very productive. And so, yeah, I mean, pears, zucchini, asparagus, tea. This is Roselle hibiscus. I use this for tea, but you can also use the leaves. Then we have all of the herbs. Now, I'm going to get into ways to prepare things, but what can you say about rosemary? You got rosemary, you got lavender, you got oregano. Now, this is focaccia. And here I was getting creative with using all of the sweet peppers I had. You can see the long stem looking thing that I was making the little flowers out of. That's onions. You can see I used some cherry tomatoes and I made bread out of it, and it was really pretty and cool looking. Then we've got corn. We haven't talked much about corn, but we have corn. We have, I believe this is basil, hanging on my front porch to dry. And then here we have peach salsa from all of the peaches and the peppers and the tomatoes. We have peach jelly. We have oregano. They have jars and jars of oregano. Now, if you look at dollar for dollar, how much your herbs and spices cost in the herb aisle, and per ounce, it's a lot of money. And a lot of the stuff comes from other countries. It's not even grown here in America. I want to say that I found out that the largest spice company is based in New York, but everything is done out of China. And, I would rather just see what's going on with all of my food from start to finish and know exactly what's going on with it. That's my preference. And if you want to know the truth of it, I don't even trust my government to grow food for my family, because they allow a lot of things to be sprayed on it that I would never feed my family if I had the choice. And I do. I grow as much of the food as I can, and the rest of it we do have to buy at the grocery store. We don't grow 100% of what we eat, but it's because I do what I can, right? But I have a few more categories of what's being grown here, and one of them is cut flowers. And what you're seeing here is Shasta daisies, but I have cut flowers according to the season and what's growing in my house all of the time. This one you're seeing larkspur mixed with cilantro. Here you see echinacea. It's not cut, it hasn't been brought in, but I certainly could. This is oregano and gladiolas. This one is zinnias mixed with, I think, cilantro. Yeah. This is oregano blossoms, oregano flowers that have actually dried, and they're great ones. This is oregano with gladiolas with, I don't know what that is, else that is in there, but a lot of times I do mix in herbs. There's more zinnias and sunflowers that are out in the garden. Sometimes I just don't have the heart to cut them, but when I do and I bring them in, I usually give them away because they're so beautiful. Now, this brings me to another important one, but I'm saving the best for last. This is not the last, is growing your own medicine. I just can't say enough good things about that. It's growing healing plants that bring you back in balance, and this just happens to be one of them. Okay, so carrots are not the most important thing I grow in my garden, but it's a good segue into what is the most important thing in the garden. But I have to tell you, I have to preface this with, I just got so tickled, I couldn't tell you why, but it had to do with my grandson, and so here we go.
She's gonna be your pants. Come here, come here. Come here, come here. Say cheese, look at me. Look at me.
But that was taken one Easter. Everybody came over. We were going to make a carrot cake, and I don't know what he said. But anyway, so yeah, pulling peanuts. That is something that's so fun to do with the grandkids or with the kids. And around here, we play with our food. Here we had a bunch of zucchini, and we played around with it. So yeah, we spelled zook out of it. And then the chickens, the grandkids love play with the chickens, and then they go pick up the eggs. And then here's my granddaughter who loves to pick flowers. She always wants to pick all of my tiger lilies. And then just showing them where food comes from, basically. Here's a watermelon. And here's where lemons come from. A lemon tree. And these are some wild plums that me and my granddaughter and my dad's wife picked, and we made plum jelly one year. And this is not as important as the grandkids, but I wanted to put it in here, and that is compost. Everyone at my house knows if you throw anything away that's supposed to go in the compost bucket, you're going to get in trouble. So yeah, I make my own fertilizer, so that's another byproduct. It's as close to a closed loop system as you can get, right? You're growing the food, you're growing the fertilizer, you can feed it to the chickens make poop, the poop can go into the compost, and then the compost goes back into the garden. And here's some watermelons that, we just ate as many watermelons as we possibly could. Probably should have sold watermelons this year, but we just couldn't eat any more watermelons. I'd saved all the seeds I wanted to save, but guess what? Those went to the chickens, they went into the compost, and they didn't go to waste. And I'm just going to close with a few pictures of some things that I didn't squeeze in the other places, but Roselle hibiscus in this picture I can make teas with. The previous picture was lemongrass if you want to back up. There's some radishes. Just so many things that the garden gives us. Entertainment, it gives us room to grow, like with the kids and their experiences and making memories, and the nutritional aspect of it, the calorie aspect of it, the food security aspect of it, just everything that the garden gives us. I have never looked back and said, wow, I wish I hadn't done that. Except for maybe the first year that I did it and I had no idea what I was doing. And I didn't do a garden again for a long time because of that. But the main reason that I wanted to do this video is just to be able to look back on, It's really beautiful, the edible landscaping aspect of it, the aesthetics part of it, but there's so much bounty that comes from it that people just don't see. And a lot of times it's camouflaged, right? You don't know that there's any food growing there unless you know what a potato plant looks like and that potatoes grow under the ground. So, but the harvest is a beautiful thing as well. That's going to do it for this one. Until next time, bye for now.